All right. Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us live on the Fox Local app as well as on our Fox 5 NY YouTube. What we want to talk about this morning between 11:30 Eastern Time now and 12 noon is the Diddy verdict. What happens next? What should happen next? I'll tell you what we've learned from the court, being at the courthouse, and also from covering this trial since the beginning, since his arrest. I've covered it, actually since the raids that happened. I've covered it. So in case you just to explain the basic verdict that came in, Diddy was hit with 3 charges initially. There was the RICO, which is the racketeering conspiracy. There was also sex trafficking, and then there were 2 counts on that and 2 counts of transportation for prostitution. So he was acquitted, found not guilty of the most serious of the allegations. He was found not guilty of the RICO, not guilty of sex trafficking, but he was found guilty on 2 counts of the prostitution charge. So that carries a much lesser charge than the other ones, which if he'd been found guilty on the top 2 charges, he could have been looking at decades behind bars, or even, decades behind bars, or possibly even spending the rest of his life in a federal prison. So the transportation for prostitution convictions, what those really carry, maximum of 10 years each. Usually the judges don't do, they will do concurrent sentences or some kind of formula to get that. There's no minimum on the transportation for prostitution charges. So Diddy has already been behind bars for about almost 10 months now, since he was arrested in September. So what's going to happen is there will be a sentencing hearing. But of course, like everything in this trial, the prosecution wants one thing, the defense wants another thing. So the prosecution, which was obviously very upset that they did not get a conviction on that RICO racketeering charge, they said, okay, let's have a sentencing date in October. Defense said, that's too far away in the future. We need to have a sentencing hearing earlier than that. So what will happen is next week, probably Tuesday, they will sit down for a conference and try to work out a date that's closer to what the defense wants, or maybe someplace in the middle, so Diddy does not have to remain behind bars that long for the sentencing. So we'll see what happens. In terms of the bail, a lot of people, including myself, I thought that because he was found not guilty in the top 2 charges, that he would have been granted bail yesterday and would have been walking out of the courthouse at some point tomorrow afternoon after they had fulfilled all of the bail requirements. But that was not to be. The prosecution, and let me just say, we're going to be taking comments here. The question for you is, what do you think should happen next? Do you think Diddy should have been freed immediately or given bail immediately instead of being kept behind bars at the Metropolitan Detention Center? Let me know in your comments. If you have other questions or comments on the verdict, do you think this was a fair verdict? Do you think that maybe he should have been not guilty on all the charges? Do you feel he should have been guilty on all of the charges? Let us know your thoughts, because it's been very clear since the beginning of this that there were two schools of thought, and very few people in the middle, people who thought he really should be held accountable for everything in that criminal complaint, held guilty. Other people that felt that this was just a big overreach by the federal government. This was just a prosecutorial overcharge, and that, Diddy admitted he had committed assaults, he admitted domestic violence, admitted he had a drug problem, but he should not have been held guilty but he should not have been found guilty in the way that these charges were presented in the federal arena, which is very, very serious. So let us know with that. So the prosecution basically argued to the judge yesterday. Typically, excuse me, I just got to take a sip of coffee because I've been talking pretty much nonstop all week long. But I'm excited to be talking to you now about this and here on these formats. So welcome to everybody who's joining us on the Fox 5 NY YouTube and Fox Local. We're kind of debriefing on the Diddy verdict and the upcoming Diddy sentencing and talking about what this case is really all about. So there were a couple of slogans that came out of this. There were Diddy supporters saying a freako, as in a freak off, is not a RICO. There was a T-shirt that was out on the streets of Harlem that basically was saying, when it's sex, drugs, and rock and roll, it's the American way. When it's sex, drugs, and hip hop, it's a RICO. And those were some of the prevailing thoughts of the Diddy supporters. There were people, sexual assault survivors, domestic abuse survivors, who protested yesterday and the day before outside the courthouse, saying that this was a very unfortunate, that he should have been found guilty of all the charges. So there were two schools of thought of this. So let's get back to what happened yesterday in that courtroom. So the verdict comes out. This verdict, not guilty of racketeering, not guilty of 2 counts of sex trafficking. Diddy is like slumped back in his chair with his head bowed. And then comes the transportation for prostitution, guilty of 2 counts on that. So now, usually what will happen, typically, according to what the legal experts tell me, is that at that point, they may take a short break, but they'll begin to talk about bail fairly soon right after that, within the same courtroom time period. But that didn't happen yesterday. The prosecutors asked the judge, they said, hey, we need a couple of hours to figure out what we're comfortable with the bail situation. And so the judge granted that. So even though the verdict came in yesterday morning, he made everybody come back at 5 o'clock for a hearing about the bail. And during that time, Diddy's in a holding pen in the federal courthouse, basically reading one of the 2 books that he said he was reading this week, The Power of Positive Thinking and The Happiness Advantage. And so, he was there waiting this out to find out, is he going to go out to dinner with his family afterwards and celebrate, and at least celebrate being reunited with them? Or is he going to end up going back to MDC, the Metropolitan Detention Center, one of the most violent, one of the worst, pretty much federal detention facilities in the whole federal system, according to what the court watchers are saying. Okay, we got some comments coming in here. Let me just see. Okay, let's see what the comments are here. Okay, Mike, can you read that for me, please? Oh, here we go. Okay, Gulf Coast Girl says, considering the judge didn't allow Diddy out due to his violent nature, what is your guess how he will sentence him on these counts? Okay, that's a great question. In terms of sentencing on these counts, there's no minimum. A lot of times there's a minimum of 3 years or a mandatory minimum of a certain period of time. But in this case, there's no minimum. There's a maximum of 10 years on each. Before we can even answer your question, Gulf Coast Girl, what is happening now is they will begin a process next week of the pre-sentencing investigation. This will take into account his behavior. This will take into account what the prosecutors say. This will take into account where will he be residing, because that was an issue with one of the bail things. He wanted to get bail and go back to Star Island in Florida, one of the places that was raided in Miami in March of 2024. That's not going to happen. The judge said, no way, you have to reside within the Southern District of New York. This is the federal court jurisdiction. So I think that the judge, the sentencing is going to be, it's not going to be a slap on the wrist, but I don't think it's going to be 20 years. Most of the legal experts are saying he may get around 5 years, may get even as little as 3 years, and then get credit for the time that he's been in the federal, in the federal prison, federal jail cell because it's a detention center. It's called a jail because people in there like Diddy were not convicted of any felony. Now he's a convicted felon, unless they appeal that conviction, which I'm sure will happen down the road. So it's anyone's guess what it'll be. Most legal experts say it's not going to be 20 years, but it could be 3 to 5 years, somewhere in that range, with time served. So he's basically out in a short period of time. So, okay, Ali says a jury of his peers didn't convict him on all the charges, but on the lesser of the charges. Respect the jury and any other person that they will have been sent home. I didn't quite understand that. Mike, you get that one, or Ali's point? Okay. All right, Ali, that's just your comment. Okay, so back to what happened yesterday in terms of the timeline. So the verdict's in. The prosecutors are asking for this extra time. They come back at 5 o'clock. In the meantime, Cassie Ventura sends a letter through her attorney to the court, which of course the prosecutors had, saying that she feared for her personal safety if Diddy was released on bail. Now that's pretty intense, and because one of the things that the federal court system takes most court systems do, but especially the feds, again from what I've been being told by the lawyers that try these cases and have tried the cases in this district, one of the most serious questions that they have to deal with is witness intimidation. Excuse me. One of the reasons Diddy was denied bail early on was one of the several bail attempts, the attempts that his lawyers made to get bail. One of the denials was based on the fact that the prosecution said he is intimidating witnesses from behind bars, because what he's doing at the MDC, at the Metropolitan Detention Center, he is getting access to other inmates, other detainees' phone cards and phone credit time, because they have only a certain amount of time that they can use the telephone when you're incarcerated in that particular facility. So he was basically getting other people's time to use that to make calls to people, having other people make calls to people, basically allegedly intimidating potential witnesses. So the Fed said that they had proof of that. The judge said, okay, bail denied. That's it. Even though he was offering $50 million bail, an ankle monitor, 24-hour monitoring by professional security, basically under house arrest in an apartment in Manhattan where he would have no access to the internet. There would be no guests except for family members on an authorized list of guests that were coming in, that would be allowed in to see him during specific hours only. So there's not going to be any freak-offs going on in the apartment if he was granted that bail. He would be under constant monitoring. There'd be video camera surveillance on him as well as on the building. So that proposal was denied. So I think that this Cassie letter played a big role in it, because she was she was basically their star witness. She came in, she testified under her own name. She went through the allegations, and of course there was that Cassie beating video, that horrific video that the world saw of her being beaten in that hallway in Los Angeles. And a lot of people, were shocked when they saw that. A lot of people saw Sean Diddy Combs in a way that they'd never seen him before. He's there wrapped in a towel. He's dragging her by the hair. He's kicking her. He's stomping her and abusing her in the hallway, dragging her. And a lot of people had only seen him on red carpets, perfectly groomed, with his jewelry, with his designer clothes, looking like the big celebrity that he was, or that he still is, but for different reasons now. And I think the Cassie video was I know the Cassie video played a huge role in this trial, because it was played multiple times. The prosecution introduced it as evidence. They fought to be allowed to show it to the jury. They won that fight. They showed it to the jury multiple times at the beginning of the trial. They showed it to the jury at various points during the course of this nearly 8-week trial. They showed it to the jury in the closing arguments, once again, about that, basically to say Sean Diddy Combs is a violent man, and this is what he's capable of. And, forget the fact that it was testified by the security guard at that hotel that he offered to get police there for Cassie, put her in a safe area, have her basically just, in a secure room with a woman and one of the other security guards there while they waited for police. She turned that down. She turned away the police when she was going to her girlfriend's house after that, and the girlfriend called the cops. Cops came and they said, "Who did this to you? Who punched you? Who gave you a black eye? Who bruised up your face?" And she would not give them any kind of a name. So that was, that was another indication there. So anyway, I think that this communication, this letter from Cassie, was very, very important in terms of the denial of bail, because she's saying, hey, I came in there, I testified, I used my name, I was on that witness stand for more than 3 days, 9 months pregnant, ready to give birth like at any minute. I mean, she really captivated that courtroom with her testimony. A lot of people, even the stuff that was embarrassing to her, she handled with great dignity. She spoke up. A lot of survivors looked at her and said, she's speaking her truth, It's not a pretty truth. It's in some places an embarrassing truth, an ugly truth, but it was her truth. And she owned it, the good, the bad, the ugly. She kept her head held high, rubbing her stomach with her baby in there, and just basically saying, this is what happened, in a calm voice, and walking into that courtroom. I was in the main courtroom the day that one of the final day that she was in, which was the most embarrassing one, where they were reading the defense, they were reading comments of her, where she was basically saying that how much she missed Combs, loved him, that type of thing. And she walked down the center aisle of that courthouse in high heels, 9 months pregnant, very pregnant, with a long midi coat on, a gray sweater dress on, showing off all her curves, including her baby, a baby bulge. And she walked in and owned that courtroom, looked straight ahead, did not flinch, and Diddy's eyes were glued on her the whole time as she walked up into that witness box, and basically just said what had happened. I think that held tremendous sway with the jury, because they're like, forget the fact that she got $20 million from him, forget the fact she's getting $10 million testified she's getting $10 million from the hotel where that assault happened. This was a woman that lived through hell and spoke about it. And this was a woman who, did things that she said for love that, a lot of women would not do, and that she probably would not do now, in her 30s and in a very different place in her life. So I think that played a lot of sway, but that video was definitely a part of it. Okay, here in the live chat, do you think Trump will pardon Diddy before sentencing? That's a question a lot of people are asking. I think President Trump has a lot of other things on his mind right now besides Sean Diddy Combs' future. I think he's going to let this play out a little bit more, see what the sentencing is, and who knows, maybe something will happen at that particular point. But I think right now, the main concern for the Combs team is to try to get an earlier date for the sentencing, and to get an earlier time for the sentencing, and also to get him bail. I'm sure they're going to be making more appeals for bail. They have to come up with some good reasons that can counteract all these other things, and also a place where he can live, because he lives, when he comes to New York, he's been in hotels. He used to have residences here in New York. Most recently, he was here in hotels in September when he was arrested. He has the property in Miami, which we saw raided, the property in Los Angeles, which we saw raided. Not clear what other properties he may have, but it has to be something within the Southern District of New York to have any chance of getting a green light on the bail. Okay, one user saying in the live chat here on the YouTube live chat says, this whole outcome was a joke and a slap in the face to all victims of abuse. There's definitely a lot of people who feel that way, and who feel that he should have been punished for the abuse. The fact of the matter is, if any of the abuse victims had filed complaints with the local police within the statute of limitations of those acts of abuse, he would have already been arrested. He probably already would have been in jail on those charges, but that was not the case. The federal government doesn't need a victim to come forward and file a complaint. They can start their investigation and say, hey, we know you were a victim of this. We're sending you a subpoena to testify. It's up to you whether you want to testify or not, but we're having you subpoenaed to testify in this case. So with the state charges, which a lot of people feel like this is where this case belonged in the first place, they still would have needed victims to come forward. Cassie turned away the police a couple of times. The only police report that I could find, that I recall in this entire case, was when Kid Cudi called the police because of the firebomb of his car in his driveway. So Gulf Coast Girl is back, and she's saying victims are not going to want to come forward after this. Okay, that's an interesting point, and I think that there's other people, Gulf Coast Girl, with all due respect, that will say that it does encourage other women to come forward, but I see your point, because he was not convicted of the trafficking. I think if he had been in a trial where it was assault, attempted murder, that type of thing in a state court, I think we would have seen a very different outcome here if those cases had been brought within the statute of limitations. And I think that now too, also remember, with Cassie, we're going back nearly 10 years, with the things that happened to her. And I think in most recent years, there's national survivors hotlines, national domestic abuse hotlines. There's national sexual assault victims hotlines. There's also many counties and many states and even many cities and municipalities have those hotlines themselves. So I think that's something we want to get out to everybody. And again, it's your choice as a survivor of that. It's horrendous for the women to go through this. It's for women to go through it. And I think the other thing too that is been confusing to a lot of women too is the amount of money that was involved. Jane was the other witness in the sex trafficking, in the sex trafficking charge, which Combs was acquitted of. Diddy is still paying her $10,000 a month rent on her 5,300 square foot home in Los Angeles. Diddy was still paying for her lawyer, even though she was testifying against him. And she testified she's making $10,000 now to $50,000 a month on a good month on her OnlyFans, doing her OnlyFans account. And so I think that's another factor too. It's like justice for victims is now equated with get a check, not file a complaint and put the abuser behind bars so that he or she learns their lesson, because there are female abusers too, but the vast majority are male, according to the experts in relationship violence. But you have to look at it this way. It's like the real justice seeing that individual behind bars, or is the real justice getting a paycheck? Getting a check in a civil suit that you can win and without really having to be in such a public arena. But if you are out there in a public arena with a high profile individual, it's a whole different kind of ball game. Okay, Odin says, are the co-conspirators going to be charged? Why did the prosecution not bring them in as witnesses? Okay, Odin, this is the big question a lot of people were asking as well. I'm glad you asked it, and thank you for reminding me. There were a couple names that kept coming up that were at the center of everything for years. One of them was KK, that was Coram, Christina Coram, who was Diddy's chief of staff for many years, until very recently. She was in the center of everything. She wasn't on the witness list. She wasn't called in to testify. She wasn't at the courtroom, nothing like that. So what's up with her? Then the other name that was central to a lot of it, especially with the alleged sex trafficking, was D-Rock, the security guard who was the one that picks up Cassie at the hotel after she's being beaten, the one who is doing this, doing that. Where are these two individuals? Harv Pierre, who was Diddy's right hand with Bad Boy Worldwide, which was the feds failed to prove was a ongoing criminal enterprise because it's an international corporation. Harv Pierre was brought in, and we did not see him on the stand. And so what some people are saying is that, as we've seen in other cases, some of these individuals, the Southern District of New York, I personally, just from what I've seen from Maureen Comey, who's the lead prosecutor in this case, she was very passionate yesterday about keeping Diddy behind bars. I don't think this is over for her. I don't think she's going to let this be the end of it. I could be wrong, but I don't think she's going to let it be the end of it. And I'm sure with the federal government, with the way that they are able to maneuver around different laws, that there may be some other charges coming from a different angle with different types of charges that will be investigated further or being brought in. So I don't think, in a way, Diddy's in the clear yet. Obviously, he's still got to wait on the sentencing and find out what's going to happen with the prostitution charge. But let me just throw one other thing out there, too. There was a phenomenal amount of drug use over many years with both witnesses, Cassie and Jane, but also with other people who were there in the case. There was Cassie's friend, who was actually her drug dealer, Miss Bongalan, who was allegedly dangled over a balcony, which proved to be false, which the defense proved to be false. She was basically a drug dealer, admitted to being a drug dealer, giving Cassie a bag of 200 pills, giving Cassie everything from pink cocaine pink cocaine to ups to downs to Adderall to ketamine. Ketamine was big in this. Ecstasy, MDMA, all of these other drugs. I had a list of over a dozen drugs the day that she testified in my notebook, because we can't bring electronics into the courtroom. So I'm writing down all these drugs, and she's going this one, this one, this one, this one, as she was being cross-examined by a Diddy defense attorney, Nicole Westmoreland. And so they may be looking into drug things there, because that's an awful lot of drugs. That's a lot of money. That sounds like felony amounts of money in terms of drug possession, in terms of drugs, whatever. Just even in possession, that's way more than a personal amount. The bag of drugs that was carried around everywhere, this Gucci bag. And so, we'll see if we see any more about that. But, we have to look at it now. So just in case you're just tuning in right now, what's coming up next is the 4th of July weekend. So wishing everybody here from from Fox 5 a very happy 4th of July weekend to everybody, wherever you are. Diddy remains incarcerated at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, New York. And then also next week, next Tuesday most likely, prosecution and defense will set up a sentencing date, and to be determined bail appeals and sentence appeals. You can be sure, though, that they will fight this all the way to the end as well. So it remains to be seen, but I don't think this story, this major part of the story involving Cassie Ventura is over, but I don't think this is the end of the prosecution wanting to try to get him on something. And I don't think this is the end of the defense wanting to exhaust every single possible legal avenue that they have in order to get him free on bail until he is sentenced. So I want to thank you for joining us on the Fox Local app and Fox 5 NY YouTube. Please follow me on X and Instagram, Lisa Evers, on TikTok, Lisa Evers Live, and see you next time.